Cade Cunningham is currently the favorite to win the NBA's Most Improved Player award. And with him being the front runner, it kind of puts on display over a guy like Norman Powell the issues with the NBA's Most Improved Player award. Welcome back to State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts, and today we're talking about just that, the NBA's Most Improved Player problem. Now, to start off here, one thing that a lot of people kind of try to bring up when they're talking about who deserves this award is the statistical production of a player and how it compares to their previous season. And there definitely is some truth to that. You look at a guy like Cade Cunningham, his production is largely the same as it was last year. Meanwhile, in the loss of Paul George, Norman Powell has been addition by subtraction, had the best year of his career, a 10-point per game increase. It's been a great, great leap for Norman Powell statistically. However, I think a lot of people kind of try to use that to discredit the actual improvement a player had because a box score doesn't determine your improvement as a player. Your actual growth and impact on the court is what does that. And for someone like Cade Cunningham, I absolutely believe that he has been a more impactful player this year than he has ever been. And that just comes with time. I talked about this in my Tower Hero episode as well. Progression isn't necessarily linear. A player could have a big box score jump and not be a better player than they were in the past, and vice versa. They could the stats don't look very different from the year prior, but the way that they're impacting the game is so much better, and we do see that with Cade Cunningham and the Pistons. This was a team that was among the worst, if not the worst, in the league last year. That broke their record, NBA single season record for most losses, consecutive losses, with 28. It was a really bad season for the Detroit Pistons, but Cade Cunningham was the leader of this team. And in spite of the terrible season, quite frankly, that the Pistons had, people were able to acknowledge the talent that Cade had and just the fact that this roster kind of was subpar around him. And this year, the roster largely hasn't changed. I believe Killian Hayes is not there anymore. And this was someone who was, starting over Jaden Ivey at times. But other than that, this roster really hasn't changed much. But this team is doing a lot better this year, and I think that is kind of the mark of a good leader and the improvement that Cunningham has had because even though the production is not necessarily, eye popping the way that it has changed year by year, the fact that he's leading the Detroit Pistons to being a more respectable team as their lead option, as their go to guy, I think that is absolutely a sign of improvement because we talk about empty stats all the time, and he's been a lot more than that this year. So for to give Cade Cunningham credit, because I think so often when it comes to sports media, when we're maybe criticizing a player or saying, maybe he shouldn't be the most improved player, we like to just tear him down. So I just want to take a second there to appreciate Cade Cunningham, all that he has done this year. However, in spite of this, I do not believe that he should be the most improved player. And I think the fact that he is the favorite right now really shows some issues with the most improved player award. And these issues kind of come in with the idea of the award itself and kind of the recognition that a player needs to reach to be able to actually receive it. Because you take a look at some of the names that have won it in recent years, last year was Tyrese Maxey over someone like Kobe White. And to an extent, that is understandable. Maxey is this player who was getting a lot of attention for his play on the court, and he was recognized with that Most Improved Player award, and he absolutely improved. He averaged about 25.9 points a game. And the year prior, he averaged 20.3. So there's a leap there. And especially in the absence of James Harden, Tyrese Maxey had to step up. And he did. He had a really good year and was absolutely deserving of at least being a finalist for that award. But coming in second, just behind him, was Kobe White, who went from being someone that when he was drafted was seen as as having potential to be a good scoring guard in this league to then, having a solid first couple of years. And then, with the addition of a guy like Lonzo Ball, the Bulls kind of gave Kobe White less opportunity to grow as a player. But then this past year, he had by far the highest scoring mark of his career, up to 19 points a night, and he was really, really impressive. And in my mind, I believe that he should have been the most improved player. And the reason for that is because I can't just, give my opinion without backing it up. Is that the jump from a star to, a superstar, or maybe not necessarily in the case of Tyrese Maxey, but in general, an all-star to an all NBA player, that is not as substantial and really impactful for your whole team as it is to go from someone who is maybe looking to find their way out of the league in terms of your team not really having a defined role for you. You look at someone like Kobe White to going out there and being a solidified starter now. I think that is a bigger leap and it's a harder one. And to kind of conceptualize that, think about just all the people watching this are probably working full-time jobs for the most part, or maybe it's just part-time if they're in school. But it's much harder to get adjusted to your job, all the tasks that you're supposed to do, than it is to go from being a good employee to employee of the month, for example. And yes, being employee of the month is a much higher regard, right? Even if all you get for your bonus is the pizza party. But it is a good thing to strive for. But you were already a good employee prior, and you just had to maybe touch up on some things. But going from being unemployed, right, and just trying to make money, trying to make ends meet, to actually getting well acquainted with a job, I think that's a much bigger leap, and I believe I kind of view it in the same way as I do with the most improved player award in the NBA, because we're talking about the most improved. And Cade Cunningham has, without a doubt, improved this year. I have no doubt about that. Even if the production doesn't say so, he is impacting the game at a much higher level than he did last year. But if we're actually kind of trying to identify a leap that a player took, let's move away from this guy who is already kind of an all-star caliber player to someone who made a much more productive leap, one that is perhaps harder to do, and that is Norman Powell, who went from a great six man to one of the best scorers, really the go-to guy a lot of the time, with the absence of Kawhi for this Clippers team, upping his scoring production by 10 points. That's huge. And he was already a very solid player, don't get me wrong. But to go from that to, people wanted to give you an all-star nod, meanwhile, Cade Cunningham, people might have already argued for that in the past. I think Norman Powell has absolutely made a higher leap and been more improved. And it's kind of rare to see. I love to see the improvement from Norm Powell because it kind of breaks the standards of how you expect player development to go. Because this is someone who's been in the league for a while now. And with that, you don't really expect them to grow and progress as players much more. There's kind of the idea that at a certain age, they're going to hit their peak, right? And Norman Powell might be beyond that, but he's having his best year yet now. And so I just wanted to go out there and say for a second that I love that he's kind of breaking the standards of how we view player development. But in conclusion, I view the leap that Norman Powell has taken as one that is greater than Cade Cunningham. And that's not just due to production, but it's due to properly impacting the game at a much higher level than you were the year prior. And that's not a knock on Cade Cunningham whatsoever. He's doing that too. But as an individual, the leap that he had to make from being, maybe a fringe all-star to one that people were this season were really advocating for, that leap is, in my opinion, not as big as going from a very good scoring six man, a very good microwave scorer, to a go-to option for your team on offense. In my opinion, that is just the bigger leap. Not a knock on Cade Cunningham whatsoever. But if we're talking about the most improved player award, we have to, consider it to be most improved. And there's a lot of factors that go into it. It's not just production. It's not just the eye test. It's a combination of factors. And the responsibility that Norman Powell has had to take on for a Clippers team that lost Paul George and was kind of wondering who was going to fill in that scoring void. It's a great leap that he has had, great progression that we've seen from him at an age where you might not expect that. And Cade Cunningham's absolutely been great too. But if we're talking about the most improved player in the league, I have no doubt in my mind that it is Norman Powell, first and foremost. And that is all for today's episode of State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. Thank you for listening.